Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MS-500 Day 3. Okay, we're about to begin. We have a very interesting day ahead of us, and this is more or less what we're going to cover for the first part of today's sessions. Okay, we're going to briefly discuss cloud application security to begin with, and of course, we're going to cover a few more topics. Okay. And once again, before we begin, remember, if you have some comments, if you have any questions, please let us know through the questions and answers section, and our moderator team will be ready to help you out with all your questions, comments, and so on. All right. Very well. That being said, let's start with the first two topics of the day. Okay. Again, as I said, we're going to discuss cloud application security. First, how we can deploy it, and then how we can use it in order to start protecting our information. We're going to cover some more topics about security labels that you can apply to your data in order to properly classify it, process it, secure it, and retrieve it, and even encrypt it. Okay, regarding those sections, we're going to get into more details about those in today's lesson as well. Okay. So, first. Application security. Well, as the name implies, this is a service that is used to protect information generated and that goes through our applications. Okay, and in this case, cloud application security is a comprehensive solution that could help you and your organization as you move to take full advantage of the promise of the cloud application. Okay, of a cloud application on all the services around it. Okay, all of this is done while keeping you in control through improved visibility into network cloud activity. It will also help you increase the protection of critical data across cloud applications. With tools that help uncover a shadow IT, for example, tools that could help you to assess risk, enforce policies, investigate activities, and stop threats, the organization can more safely move to the cloud while maintaining control of critical data as well. Okay, so the idea is that everything that is related to your services and applications could be controlled through a cloud application security, or CAS for shorts. Okay. And the idea again is that everything that could come under under the same administrative umbrella, so to say, could be managed through all the features provided by this cloud application security feature and its corresponding administrative centers. Okay, so more about this in a second. Well, now, in more details, how can you deploy cloud application security? Well, again, cloud application security can help you take advantage of the benefits of cloud applications, again, while maintaining control of your corporate resources. It will work by improving visibility of cloud activity and helping to increase the protection of corporate data regardless of the location. Remember, in some cases, this data could be hosted directly in the cloud service provider. But in the case of some information that needs to be maintained on premises, the protection provided by cloud application security will also be extended to your on-premises environment. Okay, so first of all, in order to start using cloud application security, your organization must have a license to use cloud application security, of course. Okay, and this is covered by several plans for Microsoft 365. Specifically speaking, enterprise plans, enterprise, and some others that will go above those level of subscriptions. Okay, in many cases could be could be plans E3 and E5. Okay, but also it could be included in some other plans depending on the situation. And remember, in most cases, also you can switch from different versions of Microsoft 365. You can improve the capabilities provided by those subscriptions by either moving to a different subscription or just adding cloud application security as a separate product. Okay. And after you have purchased a license for cloud application security, you will receive an email with activation information and a link to the cloud application security portal. Okay, and in order to set up cloud application security, you must be either a global administrator or a security administrator in Azure Active Directory or in Microsoft 365. Okay, it is also important, very important, to understand that, a user who is assigned an admin role will have the same permissions across all of the cloud applications that your organization has subscribed to. Okay, well, and also, now in order to properly deploy cloud application security, you must follow several steps in order to set up and get started investigating your application or configuring your applications. The first step is, for example, to configure instant visibility, okay, protection and governance actions for your applications. More details about this in a second. The second step, you need to implement ways in which you can control applications with policies. Again, more about the policies and the specific process in a minute, okay? Next, you need to set up a cloud discovery, okay? This is another service that you need to configure in order to properly identify everything that will be related to a security case, so to say, okay? Again, more details about this in a second. The next step is that you need to personalize, you need to customize your experience, okay? What are the items that are more interesting for you? What are the most critical ones? And then start creating shortcuts inside the administrative center in order to follow up over a certain case, in order to open a case, in order to close a case, in order to start gathering information, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then next, the last step is that you have to configure and you have to organize all the data according to your specific needs. Again, more details about this in a second. Okay, so what is next? First, policies. How can you control your cloud applications using policies? Well, policies are a set of rules that will allow you to define the way you want your users to behave in the cloud. The policies enable you to detect risky behavior, violations, or even suspicious data points and activities in your cloud environment, and if necessary, to integrate remediation workflows in order to achieve complete risk mitigation. Okay, so this is a comprehensive solution to control everything that is happening in your environment. Okay, and of course, there are multiple types of policies that can be correlated to the different types of information you want to gather about your cloud environment and the types of remediation actions you may want to take. Okay, for example, if there is a data violation, a threat that you want to quarantine, you need a different type of policy in place than if you want to block a risky cloud application from being used by your organization. Okay, so again, depending on the situation, you can implement one or two or even several policies regarding on the situation. Okay, depending on the situation. Well, now cloud discovery. Well, first, there are two types of reports that you can generate using cloud discovery. Okay, snapshot reports and continuous reports. Okay, in the first case, snapshot reports will provide an ad hoc visibility on a set of traffic logs that you manually upload from your firewalls and proxies. Then continuous reports will be used to analyze all logs that are forwarded from your network using cloud application security. Okay, so cloud discovery will analyze your traffic logs against Microsoft Cloud Application Security's cloud app catalog or over 16,000 cloud applications that are ranked and scored based on more than 70 risk factors, okay, in order to provide you with ongoing visibility into cloud use, okay, also with ongoing visibility regarding shadow IT and the risk shadow IT possesses in your organization, okay, and again, depending on what this tool is able to find out, you will receive a report, and then you can start taking proper measures in order to modify all the findings, okay? So now, application connectors. Well, here's an interesting part here. Application connectors leverage the APIs of app providers in order to enable greater visibility and control by Microsoft Cloud Application Security over the applications you connect to, okay? Microsoft Cloud Application Security will leverage also the APIs provided by the cloud provider. Each service has its own framework and app API limitations, of course. And with Cloud Application Security work, in this case, Microsoft work with the services to optimize the usage of the APIs and to ensure the best performance. Okay, so in this case, this is developed in conjunction with Microsoft and other providers, okay, another vendors in this case. But all in all, cloud application security will support multiple instances of the same connected application. For example, so if you have multiple instances of, for example, Salesforce, okay, one for sales and one for marketing, so to say, you will be able to connect them both to cloud application security and manage them from the same console in order to create granular policies and deeper investigation. Okay. This support will apply only to an API connected applications, okay, not to cloud discovery applications or proxy connected applications. Okay, this is only for applications that are directly connected to this service. Okay, and well, now cloud application security and conditional access. Well, session and access controls can be applied to any interactive single sign-on using the SAML 2.0 authentication protocol. Or if you are using Azure Active Directory, which is the recommended thing to do, the OpenID Connect authentication protocol as well. Okay, so well, in short, when integrating with Azure Active Directory conditional access, you can configure applications to work with conditional access application control with just a few clicks. After just a few clicks, okay. And then the conditions can be used to define who and what and where a conditional access policy is applied to. Okay, the who is defined to, well, it's used to define a user or a group of users. The what is used to define which cloud applications this is going to be applied to and over which context. Okay, in this case, this is the where. Okay, which locations and networks can be applied this access policies to. Okay. And of course, given the fact that the number of policies could overlap or could get into conflict with each other, you need to, a set of tools that could help you troubleshoot cloud application security. Okay, so when troubleshooting Microsoft Cloud Application Security and its corresponding configurations, you will need to consider the following troubleshooting areas. Okay, first, the service status. Remember, this is a cloud service provided by a third party, in this case, not within your company. So in some cases, some outages may happen, okay? And well, the first step for you is to determine what is the service status right now, at the moment of failure, for example, okay? And then, of course, from there, you can move to your related applications. For example, a cloud discovery in order to try to locate and evaluate API connectors and its corresponding status using error messages, again, regarding and depending on the APIs that you are using. Okay, then you need to investigate, or you need to review the content inspection that you have configured, and maybe there in that precise point you may encounter some things that could get into context or could get into conflict depending on the configuration. Okay, let's put just a simple example here. For example, let's say that you have approved an application to be connected through certain types of networks or even devices that come from inside your on-premises network, okay, or your on-premises sites, okay, so to say. But you configure another policy that could maybe control or maybe block at a certain level the request that comes from outside connections, maybe, for example, the same user, but through a VPN, okay? If you do not properly configure those policies, maybe they could get into conflict, okay? Because maybe some points could not be properly evaluated, okay? Once again, depending on the situation, if a user that has been applied the same set of policies, maybe that user can connect without any problems from inside your network. But if for some reason that user wants to connect from another site, maybe they have moved to another site, maybe that user moved to another site, even if that request is coming from a valid location, and it's a valid user using a valid account and authentication methods, given the fact that, well, if this user has not been configured properly, even if that request is valid, maybe they could not be evaluated properly because, well, the request is coming from a different location from the original one, and then different policies will be applied. In that case, it may result in blocking the access for this user, okay? Again, just to set a very simple example, there are, of course, lots of several other situations that could have an impact on the way in which these policies could be applied to your users, right? And well, Then the integration with other tools, okay, the SIEM tools that could be used in order to follow up on everything that is going on in your infrastructure. Okay, maybe everything is being reported properly inside the cloud admin consoles. But if you want to send this information to other third-party tools, maybe, for example, those that could be used from, for example, System Center or other monitoring tools such as Grafana or even Watchdog or many, many others. In that case, maybe that information, if not properly configured, if you don't properly configure the communication channel, that information is not going to be reflected properly in that external console. Okay, so again, remember to use the appropriate connectors. All right. Next, the Cloud Discovery Docker deployment. Well, in this case, if you are integrating applications that can be deployed to containers for Docker or even Kubernetes, you also need to properly configure the communication channels regarding what kind of information do you want to authorize, what information do you want to gather, and so on. Okay, and all of this in order to be properly deployed, configured, and so on, you need to properly fine-tune your policies. Okay. And again, the policies will be used to define what rules are going to be in place, okay, depending on the application, depending on the profile, depending on a group of users, okay. And well, remember, just to switch it back real quick here, okay, the conditions, the policies will be used to define who and what and where a conditional access policy is going to be applied to, and some other types of policies as well, okay. So now, once you have properly configured or at least performed initial setup, you can start using cloud application security information in order to modify and review what is the current state of your policies, and then maybe modify them accordingly. Okay, of course, this has to be an ongoing process that will allow you to fine-tune everything that is going on in your environment. Okay, and this can be done on a regular basis. So, well, first, discovered apps, okay? The Cloud Discovery dashboard that you can see here in this slide is designed to give you more insight into how cloud applications are being used in your organization, okay? Including those that are not officially covered by your IT department, okay? And yeah, I mean, by that I mean shallow IT, okay? And well, some other aspects of your inventory that could be active at the moment. But well, in short, this dashboard will provide an at a glance overview of what kinds of applications are being used, okay? And from there, you can see also your open alerts, depending on what were the findings of this application or the service, the risk level of application in your organization, okay, as well, okay? It will also show you who your top app users are and provides an app headquarter location map, okay? The Cloud Discovery dashboard has many options in order to filter the data, okay? Filtering will allow you to generate specific views depending on what you are most interested in, using easy-to-understand graphics to give you the full picture, again, at a glance, okay? So the first thing you should do to get a general picture of your cloud discovery applications is review several points of information in this dashboard, okay? First, you can first take a look at the overall cloud application use in your organization in the high-level usage overview, okay, that will be found here in this section of the dashboard, okay? Then you can dive one level deeper to see which are the top categories used in your organization, okay? And well, for each of the different use parameters, you can see how much of this usage is by, for example, sanction applications, okay? You can go even deeper and see all the applications in a specific category in the Discovery Applications tab, okay? And also, you can see the top users and source IP addresses in order to identify which users are the most dominant users for cloud applications in your organization as well, okay? Another step that you could take, for example, you can check how the Discovery applications spread according to geographic location, according to their headquarters, for example. This can be done in the app headquarters map. And finally, don't forget to review the risk score of the Discovery application and applications in the app risk overview. You can check the Discovery alerts status to see how many open alerts should you investigate, okay? And again, this can be found right here at the top side of the of the dashboard. Here you can find the dashboard, then the discovery application staff, the IP addresses, and the users, okay? From here, you can see a list that looks more or less like this, okay? In order to, for example, identify all the discovery applications, it's more or less like an inventory of everything that is active in your environment at this moment, okay? And remember here, this list could include some applications that are that have not been officially approved by your organization, okay? But that are installed on some devices, and well, in that case, you need to take proper measures, okay, regarding this. For example, let's say that you have a list of 10 authorized applications, and then in this section of the discovery application service, you can find that you have at least 15 different applications. So that well, those additional 5 applications should be a reason to raise an alert. Okay, and from there you can start investigating each application, who has installed it, where it was discovered, and so on and so forth. Okay, so well, now the risk score. Well, this is the total score of any given application, and in this case, well, this score is a weighted average of subscores relating to the subcategories which cloud application security considers when assessing reliability. Okay, this could include general, compliance, security, and legal. Okay, but well, to give it a little more context, the Cloud Application Catalog will give you a full picture of what Cloud Discovery identifies. Okay, again, Cloud Discovery will analyze your traffic logs against Microsoft Cloud Application Security's Cloud Application Catalog, and this is composed of over 16,000 cloud applications that again are going to be ranked and scored based on more than 70 risk factors. Okay, in order to provide you with the ongoing visibility into cloud use. Okay, and again, this could be used in order to perform discovery against shadow IT and the potential risk this shadow IT discover could possess a organization. Okay, well, now the Cloud Application Catalog will rate risk for your cloud applications based on regulatory certification, industry standards, and best practices. Okay, so well, again, these 4 complementary processes run in the Cloud Application Catalog to keep it up to date. Okay, the first one is, for example, automated data extraction directly from the cloud application from attributes such as SOC 2, compliance, terms of service, log on URL, privacy policy, and even headquarters location, for example, or geographical location. Okay, this also will provide with automated advanced data extraction for data by cloud application security algorithms, okay, for the attributes such as HTTP security headers, or even if they have an HTTPS security header, and so on and so forth, okay. Also, continuous analysis by the Cloud Application Security Cloud Analyst team could also be provided. This is for attributes such as encryption at rest, if present or not, okay. And also, consumer-based revision request based on customer submission request for changes to the Cloud Application Catalog. In this case, all requests are going to be reviewed by Microsoft Cloud Analyst team and updated based on their findings. Okay, maybe again this application could be deemed as safe, and then in that case, you can either add it to an authorized list of applications, or you can mark it as worth investigating, or even block it completely if you want to. Okay, and well, speaking of alerts, well, generally speaking, it's a good idea to review all your alerts and to use them as tools for modifying your policies. Okay, so well, alerts in short are the entry points to understanding your cloud environment more deeply. You might want to create new policies based on what you find. Again, for example, you might see an administrator signing in from Greenland, okay, and no one in your organization even signed in from Greenland before. You can create then a policy that automatically suspends an admin account or any given account when it is used to sign in from that location, from this point over. Okay, so again, it's a good idea to review all of your alerts and to use them as tools, as points for modifying your policies. Okay. So in this case also, if harmless events are being considered violations to existing policies, you need to refine your policies so that you receive fewer unnecessary alerts as well. So again, this is going to be an ongoing process that could be used to fine-tune the way in which you receive these alerts, okay? And then, well, how can you govern connected applications? Okay, well, in this case, for connected applications, you can apply governance actions to files or even activities. Governance actions are integrated actions you can run on files or activities directly from Microsoft Cloud Application Security Catalog. Okay, governance actions could include notifications, quarantine actions, labeling actions, and more about labels in a minute. Inherit permissions from the parent, for example, and for example, change sharing, and well, those that could go directly into the trash. Okay, and well, that is it for this first part of today's lessons, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, if you have some comments, if you have some questions, please let us know through the questions and answers section here. Okay, so let's see. Moving on to our next set of topics. Okay, let's see. We're going to talk a little about mobility and some other concepts here. Okay, so moving on then real quick, ladies and gentlemen. First, mobile application management, or MAM for shorts. Okay, still speaking about applications. Well, now regarding mobile applications, okay? First, mobile application management is a suite of management features that will allow you to publish, push, configure, secure, monitor, and update mobile applications, okay? MAM is configured using Intune by using app protection policies, okay? But well, the important benefits of using app protection policies will include, but of course are not limited to, protecting your company data at the application level, okay? And also, end user productivity is not impacted, okay? That is very important. And the policies are not applied when using the application in a personal context, okay? App protection policies can be applied to mobile applications on iOS and Android devices that support MAM, okay? And in this case, well, this is for mainly the most recent versions of Android and iOS, okay? But also, depending on the situation, this could cover certain applications that run on not so recent versions of these operating systems, okay? Well, that is just the general overview. So, first, how can you use Configuration Manager? Well, first of all, Configuration Manager is a recommended tool for deploying and managing desktop applications, and it could also be used for deploying Microsoft Store apps. Okay, Configuration Manager is a part of the suite of System Center. Okay, so well, now in Configuration Manager, you can deploy applications by configuring applications or by using the traditional method of configuring packages and programs. Configuration Manager must be connected to Intune to be able to manage mobile applications if you want to. Okay, this is completely optional. In order to apply restrictions to an application, the application must incorporate the Microsoft Intune App Software Development Kit and corresponding modules. Okay, so in short, if you are developing your own application, you can use this software development kit in order to implement features that could be used to properly connect and manage those applications through this suite of applications as well. Okay. So now using Intune, well. You can use Intune for managing the lifecycle of traditional desktop applications as well as modern Microsoft Store applications as well. Okay, you can assign and manage applications on Intune enrolled devices as well as on devices that are not directly enrolled to Intune. Okay, but well, you can have a slightly different level of control over those devices. Okay, so well, Intune MAM will support two main configurations: Intune Mobile Device Management and of course MAM. Okay, and also on the other side, a MAM without device enrollment. Okay, in this case, you can apply policies to devices that do not directly belong to the company. Maybe they are bring your own devices, or maybe personal devices used by your employees. Okay. So now, as well, you can use Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory, remember, will provide several benefits for application management. All of this is done through policies. Okay, and of course, that includes. But again, this is not limited to application authentication and authorization processes, user authentication and authorization process as well, single sign-on policies using password synchronization, users provisioning and synchronization, and also airbag, role-based access control as well. okay? And in some cases, application publishing and proxy, okay? In this case, the profile of the application and the channel that is being used by this application in order to get access to your resources, all right? And now, in more details, mobile device management, or MDM for short, okay? In this case, well, how can you manage your devices? We have briefly described the way in which you can manage applications, but what about the devices that host those applications? Okay, so well, in this case, MDM, or mobile device management, is an industry standard for managing mobile devices such as smartphones, tablets, laptops, and even desktop computers. Okay, so in this case, MDM is implemented by using MDM Authority and MDM clients. Okay. Microsoft offers two MDM Authority solutions. Again, the first one is Intune, of course, or MDM for Office 365. Well, for Microsoft 365 in this case. Okay. MDM authorities such as Intune will provide several capabilities, including, for example, device enrollment processes. How can you configure these devices once they have been enrolled, of course? How can you monitor and generate reports from the findings for this tool? Application management for those managed devices, and selectively delete the data that is inside of devices. In the case, for example, that the device has been stolen or lost, you can push a signal in order to remotely wipe certain portions of data, or even to perform a remote wipe of the complete device. Okay. And here, just a small comparison between MDM for Office 365 and Intune. Okay. In most cases, as you can see, Intune can perform several activities that cannot be done by MDM in itself, okay, as a standalone solution, okay. It is not that, well, the fact is that they are not mutually exclusive, okay. It is not that one is better or the other. The point is you can use both in combination depending on the type of device, depending on the type of user, depending on the type of applications that you want to manage. Some applications can be managed, for example, using Intune, and some applications on devices or devices could be managed using MDM. Okay, so it's a matter of selecting which works better depending on the situation. Okay, or depending on your specific project or the specific group of users of applications and so on and so forth. Okay, again, you can use them separately, or of course they will work better if you use them in combination with each other. Okay. And well, not to get into many details here, you can take a closer look at this table, consulting your documentation. Okay, remember all of this information is available to you through the documentation that has been provided when you enroll for this course. Okay, if you have a question where you can find this documentation, the first point that you may want to browse is, for example, Microsoft Learn. Okay. And if you want to get more specific information, remember, our moderators are ready to answer all your questions, okay? Well, so going back to our presentation, policy settings for mobile devices. Well, MDM policies and profiles are groups of settings that control features on mobile devices, okay? So when you create policies or profiles, you can only deploy them by assigning them to groups, okay? So you first create the rule, and then you assign them to a group of users, ideally, okay? Well, in this case, for mobile devices, to be more specific. But well, in MDM for Office 365, you can manage the following mobile devices settings. Organization-wide device access settings. This is going to be applied to all devices inside a corporation, and also device security policies for, well, depending on the type of device, depending on the version of an operating system for iOS and Android, and depending also on the case, you can apply specific rules, specific policies to certain versions of applications as well. Okay, well, in Microsoft Intune, you can manage additional settings. For example, device enrollment and restriction, a device compliance policy, device configuration policies as well, conditional access, and software updates. Okay, so again, depending on the situation, you can configure any of these settings, and some others that will allow you to control the way in which users can connect, can consume, and even remove applications from their devices. Okay. In more details, how can you control email and document access, for example? An important benefit of using MDM for managing devices is that you can allow access to email and documents only from devices that are managed by MDM and comply with company policy or policies. Okay, you can define company policy by using the device security policies in Office 365 or device compliance policy in Intune devices. And of course, if a device is not enrolled to MDM, you can prevent access to mailboxes, documents, and cloud applications from such devices as well. And well, additionally, here you can, for example, also implement the remediation steps in order to maybe make a device compliant. Okay. For example, if this is the first time that a valid user, is attempting to use a device in order to get access to his or her email or their related documents, you can implement a way in which a user can manually authorize that device, again, depending on several policies or permissions that could be applied at the account level or at the device level as well. Okay, so now, real quick here, how can you deploy mobile devices services? Well, real quick right now. How can you activate MDM services? Okay, so in order to set up Microsoft Intune for device management, you must configure the MDM authority. Okay, so before you start enrolling and managing devices, you must configure MDM authority by selecting one of three available options. Okay, you can, for example, configure Intune MDM authority. You can configure, you can use Configuration Manager MDM authority, or you can select none. Okay, so in this case, which are going to be the options to activate or maybe not activate, in this case, the way in which this device it could be connected. Okay, so I will here as a brief description. Okay, you can choose whether Intune Configuration Manager is your mobile device manager authority. Okay, and well, here you will be presented with these three options as well: Intune MDM authority, Configuration Manager MDM authority, or none if you don't want to apply any policies at this moment at least. Okay, and well, depending again on the situation or what do you want to manage, you can select any of these and then start configuring each process separately. Okay. And well, after you configure your MDM authority in Intune or activate the mobile device manager service in MDM for Office 365, you will need to perform some additional tasks before you can successfully start enrolling and managing devices. The task required to deploy MDM could include configure domains for MDM, I mean, from which domains this application can be connected from, and well, how can you configure an APN certificate for iOS devices? Okay, the APN will be used to properly identify the devices that could be used. Okay, using the infrastructure provided by Apple, in this case for iOS devices, how can you send or receive information from those managed devices? Okay. Also, if you want to, you can configure how can you set up multi-factor authentication and how this multi-factor authentication is going to be applied to your devices. Okay. And then you can also manage devices security policies. Okay, again, the conditions over which these devices are going to be used. Okay, and under which conditions, for example, you can perform a remote wipe for these devices. Okay, again, depending on the situation. Okay, so now how can you configure domains for MDM? So, well, if you want to enable users to enroll their Windows 10 or Windows 11 devices to MDM by using Auto Discovery, you must configure the domain by adding a DNS record to the domain DNS zone. Okay, and then, well, if your company is using Azure Active Directory Premium, you can integrate Azure Active Directory with Intune to configure automatic MDM enrollment. Okay, and then you can configure Auto Discovery by creating an alias, in this case, a CNAME record, okay, a CNAME record resource record in the DNS zone that automatically redirects enrollment requests to Intune servers. Once again, this is in the case that you want to perform auto enrollment features for your users. Okay, like in the example that I was mentioning a minute ago, if this is the first time that a user wants to use a certain device in order to get access to email or documents, and if that device has not been authorized, you can allow the user to automatically enroll those devices by performing several or just a few steps in order to properly configure the device before you can grant them access to using this device. Okay, so well, here, for example, you can configure a host name, in this case, the enterprise enrollment or enterprise registration, and in both cases, you will have to create a CNAME a record in your DNS zone. Okay, and then, well, you can point those records to these addresses: enterpriseenrollment.manage.microsoft.com and enterprise registration.windows.net, depending again on on which one you want to configure. In most cases, of course, you will use both. Okay, and the default time to live, okay, is going to be 3,600 seconds. This is defined in seconds. Okay, so in this case, it's more or less. You can configure this time to live. This is just the default setting, but this is the recommended one. Okay, you can increase it or even remove it. But well, in most cases, the time to live for this DNS record is it's going to have its corresponding default value. Okay. So now APN certificates for iOS devices. Again, this is just for iOS devices. Okay, so if you want to manage iPads, iPhones, and even Mac devices by using MDM, you will need an app push notification certificate to communicate securely with those devices. Okay, after you add the certificate to Intune or Office 365, you can your users can enroll their iOS and Mac OS devices by using the company portal application or Apple's bulk enrollment methods, such as Device Enrollment Program, Apple School Manager, or Apple Configurator. Okay, and by default, the APN certificate is valid for 1 year only. Okay, so if your APN certificate expires, enrollment of new iOS devices will fail. Okay, so you need to renew that certificate on a yearly basis. All right. So now, how can you manage device security policies? Well, in this case, security policies can be implemented by configuring device configuration profiles, device compliance policies, and conditional access policies as well. Intune will enable you to create and deploy different types of device configuration profiles, including device restorations, endpoint protection, and Microsoft Defender ATP. Okay, and also, a device compliance policy will be used to specify the device configuration that must be met for the device to be considered compliant, such as the use of PIN or device encryption, and even for example, specifying the valid operating version system that is going to be used by this device. Okay, before it can be considered as compliant. Okay, and also the presence of some other settings, such as, for example, that this device has the most recent updates, or if it has a valid or updated firmware for antivirus solutions, and so on and so forth. Okay, but well, conditional access policies will enable you to control access to company applications and resources, such as Exchange Online or OneDrive for Business, only if prerequisites are met. So again, depending on the status of this device can be used or can be blocked to get access to your corporate resources. Okay, all of this can be configured again using a set of policies defined here. Okay, and then next, how can you define corporate device enrollment policies? Okay, so again, by default, users are allowed to enroll all supported device types to Intune. Okay, but well, you can configure enrollment restrictions and use several of the following criteria. You can, for example, configure the maximum number of devices that a user can enroll. For example, up to 3 devices per users only. The device platforms that can be enrolled, once again, depending on the version of the operating system. The required operating system versions for iOS, Android Work Profile, and Windows devices as well. Okay, and well, it's worth mentioning that certain versions of Linux could also be included here. Okay, and well, also you can restrict enrollment of personally owned devices. Okay, this can be applied only to devices that belong to the company, and in this case, the bring your own device scenarios are not going to be supported in case that you don't want to do so. Okay, and well, now, how can you enroll devices to mobile device management? Just as a last point, for example, how can you enroll Windows 10 and Android devices? Okay, well, of course, there are several different ways to enroll Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices to MDM, based first on device type and its current state, including but not limited to, again, if a device is already joined to your on-premises Active Directory domain services. In that case, you can use group policy to automatically enroll it to MDM. And also you can configure integration between Azure Active Directory and MDM, so that when you join a Windows 10 or Windows 11 device to Azure Active Directory, it is also going to be automatically enrolled to MDM. Okay, And well, as another option, you can enroll Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices to MDM manually by using a settings application, provisioning packages, or even the company portal application as well. Automatic enrollment to MDM works only for Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices, okay, not for previous versions of Windows, okay. But also, well, Android devices can only be enrolled manually to MDM by using the company portal app, and the same can be applied to Windows, to iOS devices, okay. Speaking of which, you can optionally enroll iOS devices using DEEP, okay, the Apple Device Enrollment Program. Okay, this is an online service that automates enrollment and configuration of Apple iOS devices to MDM. DEEP is only available for devices that an organization purchases through either Apple or authorized resellers. In short, this cannot be applied to jailbreaked devices as well. Okay, iOS devices enrolled in DEEP do not require manual configuration. Okay, all of this configuration is going to be received automatically by the portal. Okay, and then, well, the enrollment rules. Well, by default, all users who are assigned an Intune license are allowed to enroll the supported device types to Intune. Enrollment restrictions can include several criteria. For example, the maximum number of devices that users can enroll, device platforms that can be enrolled, require operating system version, and restrict enrollment of personally owned devices as well. Okay, and well, now, how can you ensure users enroll the devices? Well, again, you can configure automatic enrollment to MDM for Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices only. Okay, and also if Azure Active Directory is integrated with MDM, then any Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices that users join to Azure Active Directory will be automatically enrolled to MDM, and those devices are going to be subject to the policies that you have configured as well. Okay, you can enroll Android and iOS devices by using the company portal application if you want to, and also you can configure a security policy in Microsoft 365 or conditional access policies in Intune, okay, in order to allow or even deny access to company resources only from enrolled devices or only from certain types of devices as well, okay, and even using the specific versions of certain applications, okay. For example, if you have developed an in-house application that is used to connect to certain resources, for example, documents or images or any other type of data that is used by your that is used by your users. In this case, you can specify that, for example, if you have version 1 or version 2 or version 3, you can specify the specific version of this application that can be used by your users and maybe block a legacy version of the same application, even if they are installed on already enrolled devices as well. Okay, but well, now, how can you configure a device enrollment manager role? Well, device enrollment management is a specially user account used to enroll devices. Okay, so well, this account will allow organizations to use Intune to manage large numbers of mobile devices with a single user account. So, in order to add multiple existing users to the DIM account to give them special DM capabilities, you need to configure this enrollment management role as well. Okay, so now then, devices that are enrolled by a device enrollment manager will have differences when compared to devices that are enrolled individually by users. Okay, in order to do so, a user must be a global administrator or at the very least a member of the Intune Service Administrator Azure Active Directory role in order to be able to perform the tasks that are related to a deep enrollment. Okay. Another option is, for example, to configure multi-factor authentication considerations. Okay, so well, if an environment where stronger authentication is required, you can include multi-factor authentication in the enrollment process. Multi-factor authentication will help secure the sign-in into Office 365 or Intune for mobile device enrollment by requiring a second form of authentication. And the second form, remember, could include, for example, a smart card or even a token, or using biometric information or even certificates and so on and so forth. Okay. In this case, MFA is turned off by default. If you want to use it, you first need to enable it and then configure it properly. Okay. So, well, now, lastly, okay, here's part of the labs. Okay, so now switching back to the last part for this model here. No, hold on a second. Where is my other presentation? Oh, okay, so it's almost time here. Well, in that case, right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief 5-minute break before we continue with the last part of today's set of lessons. Okay, and remember, afterwards, after we return from this brief break, we're going to have a longer break, a 30-minute break, before you can start with your labs. Okay, and well, once again, in any case, remember any comments or questions can be directed to our moderators team using the questions and answer section of for this portal. Okay. So, well, let me just switch back here for a second. Consideration for MFA. Yeah, this is just for the labs. Okay. In that case, okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And then we're ready to continue moving on to the next part for today's set of lessons. Let's see. So now we're going to talk a little about information protection and governance. Okay, so we have so far briefly discussed the way in which you can control applications and devices to get access to your resources. And then we're going to talk a little about how can you protect the data consumed by those devices or applications. Okay, and then how can you control the way in which this information is accessed. Okay, so now for this next part, let me just make a quick check here. All right, yeah, we're good to go. Sorry about that, just making a last minute check. And then, well, let's see, information protection and governance. We're going to start by defining some concepts. Okay, so first, information protection concepts and well, the general description for all these points. Well, let's start from this point. Okay, first we need to define an information protection life cycle. Okay, so for example, how a user can create, then store, consume, and even remove or even delete a certain type of documents and data. Okay, all of this regarding general information. Okay, and this well, you can also configure several policies in order to properly control where, how, and when this information is going to be accessed, removed, deleted, modified, transmitted even, and so on and so forth. Okay. So, well, you can start by defining the story of a file, any type of file, any given file at all. Okay. In this case, for example, for documents created in Office or documents stored in certain services such as Dropbox, such as OneDrive, even for SharePoint, and so on and so forth. So again, the idea is to, what are you going to do with all the data that is being generated by your company? Okay, and also as well, in some cases, if you want to, remember, you can apply policies in order to properly and automatically remove that information or those documents. Okay, but well, in some cases also, depending on the type of information that your users are generating, you may want to move this information from one repository to another for compliance or even for regulatory reasons. Okay, so again, the idea is to, whenever something happens, let's say, for example, that a file has not been accessed for over 3 months, what are you going to do with that file? Is it safe? Is it safe to remove it? Is it safe to move it to an archiving storage or maybe to a third-party storage service, and so on and so forth, okay? So again, in order to properly manage all of this information, you can get assistance from the creation of labels, for example. Those labels could be applied at different levels, at different stages of this of the life cycle of this information or documents, in order to properly and even sometimes automatically manage everything that is happening with your files. Okay, maybe from moving from one repository to another, maybe to delete it, maybe to archive it, compress it, encrypt it, and so on and so forth. Okay, but well, in order to do so, first you need to start by analyzing the current state of things. Okay, in this case, you need to analyze your digital state. Okay, first, for example, if you want to have control over your data when it resided within your boundaries, you can start by implementing perimeter protection, for example. In the second stage, well, now that boundary has expanded with the managed devices and cloud assets, MDM solutions can help you, but not when data moves outside from your controlled environment, as I was saying a minute ago. Okay, so because well, once this document is shared outside your environment, you will most potentially lose control over your data. So what can you do once your information or this information has been moved from outside your controlled environment? In that case, again, you can start applying several policies or even several restrictions in order to maybe allow or block, for example, the sharing for these documents. Okay, certain types of documents could not be shared from outside your infrastructure, from outside your environment. Okay, and even in the case of a potential leakage from this information, you can also restrict the way in which the information could be maybe reattached to a document, to an email, sorry, and some other policies. Okay, in some cases you can even block, for example, that a certain type of data, certain type of documents could be attached to email, and if for some reason say that information can be copied or can be sent through email or some other mediums, for example, is uploading it to an external storage service such as Dropbox or even OneDrive and so on, you can also limit the number of users that could potentially get access to that file. And maybe if they get access to the file, if that file has been encrypted, for example, then in that case, your information could still be protected against some potential leakage of information. Okay, so well, switching back to the beginning, you need to start by defining a classification journey. Okay, in this case, first you need to again classify your data. This is just the beginning of your journey. Okay, you can start, for example, classifying your data based on sensitivity. Okay, for example, by defining who created that information. Okay, if for example this information was created by the Human Resources Department, that information could penetrate only to that department. Okay, or maybe if that information is, for example, for a marketing campaign, maybe that information could only be restricted until that campaign has started. Okay, and well, maybe nobody else should be allowed to see that information. The point is, you need to start with the data that is most sensitive, defining by contents, defined by owner, defined by author, and so on and so forth. Okay, the IT department can set automatic rules. Okay, and users in that case can complement it. Okay, so again, by default, you can create a certain set of rules that could be applied at the department level, and then each user inside the department can complement, can extend those settings. Okay, and then you can associate actions such as visual marking and protection, and well, depending on the presence of those labels or the absence from those labels, you can start applying different levels of protection, of protection policies. Okay, so well, let's stay with classification. Well, you have at least 4 ways to classify your data. Okay, you can implement several user experiences for your classifying of data. Okay, the first one could be, of course, automatic. Okay, in this case, policies again can be set by the IT department for automatically applying classification and protection to certain types of data. Okay, again, depending on the department, depending on the user, depending on the contents of the files, and so on and so forth. Then you can also, for example, complement it with recommended actions. Okay, so based on the content you are working on, you can be prompted with suggested classification rules. Okay, And then, for example, you can also apply reclassification rules or policies. You can override a classification and optionally be required to provide a justification for this reclassification, okay? So, for example, for certain types of information like spreadsheets or even presentations or documents or PDF files or images, you can implement a way in which after a further analysis, this information has to be reclassified, okay, in order to further protect it, okay? And of course, you can, as I said, you can also complement these policies by allowing the users to reapply or even modify these labels in order to apply a different set of classification, okay? In this case, users can choose to apply a sensitivity label to the email or the file they are working on with a single click, well, if they are using supported applications. Certain versions of Office, for example, Word, Excel, PowerPoint applications can be used to apply different settings or additional settings in order to apply different labels that will allow the application of automatic rules that could be used to complement or even modify the way in which this information is going to be classified and even stored, okay? So, well, once you have implemented any of these policies, then how can you start governing and managing your records, okay? So, well, in this case, let's start with information governance. Well, as a definition, information governance will help you at your organization. It will help you also will help your organization to manage the end-to-end life cycle of file content across your organization's digital estate, including Microsoft 365, third-party clouds, hybrid deployments, and any content you bring into Microsoft 365. Okay. There are several governance scenarios. But here we have 3 examples. For example, when you want to create an organization-wide retention policy to delete all Microsoft Teams communication older than 7 days, for example. Okay. Also, if you want to, for example, you can review documents stored in a SharePoint document library prior to them being deleted because a retention policy expired, for example. And also, if you want, you can implement, let's say, a 5-year retention policy where automatically labeled content will be kept 5 years and then it's going to be automatically deleted. Again, depending on several situations, like, for example, regulatory or compliance reasons as well, okay? More details about this in a second. But, well, now, records management. Well, as a service, records management in Microsoft 365 will provide several capabilities. For example, you can label content as a record. You can migrate and manage your retention requirements with the definition of a file plan. More about a file plan in a later part for this model. Okay, and also you can establish retention and deletion policies within the record label. Okay, also you can trigger event-based retention. Again, more about this in a second. You can also review and validate disposition. What you're going to do with this information, what it has reached a certain stage in your lifecycle process. And, well, also, if you want, you can explore information about all disposed items. You can create a report in shorts, okay? And also, if you want, you can set specific permissions depending on the type of file, depending on the author, depending on the location, depending on the content, the size, the age, and so on and so forth, okay? Well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So, well, first, records. When content is marked as a record, the item will become immutable, which means that it cannot be modified or deleted until an administrator takes proper measures, of course. Also, additional activities about the item are going to be logged, okay? And then in that case, you will have proof of disposition when they are deleted at the end of their retention period as well, okay? And you can see an image that looks more or less like the one that is here in this slide, okay? So, for example, if you want to delete a folder and one of the elements inside that folder has been marked as a record, then you will see a screen that looks more or less like this. Okay, in this case, one item was not deleted inside this folder, the all documents listing, for example. And if you want, you can start applying filters depending if you want to see which elements were not deleted, when they were deleted, and so on and so forth. Okay, and, well, now, a little more about file plans. Well, file plans can be used for all retention labels, even if they don't mark content as records, okay? In order to start creating a file plan, here you need to browse to this section, okay, in the admin center. You can go to records management, And from there, you need to switch to file plan, the file plan tab, okay? And then here, for example, you need to, well, you have to create a label, and then you can start specifying what do you want to do with these files, okay? For example, you can create some rules. Like for example, this one, you can specify a name for this label, complaints, okay? And this is going to be based, for example, when created. And well, if this is not a record, then you're not going to do anything for example. And you can specify the retention period for 10 years, okay? Or for example, forever, okay? Again, depending on the situation, depending if this is for regulatory reasons, for compliance reasons, for example, for management policies applied to these documents, depending on the department, depending on the manager, and many, many other options here, okay? So now a little more about this. Then you can also, let's say, supplement this process by using sensitivity labels. Well, as a matter of fact, these labels are at the center of the definition of your plans, in which you can, for how you can manage your data and your documents, okay? So first, some definitions about sensitivity labels, okay? All the labels are completely customizable, okay? You can develop your own labels. Again, depending on the type of data, depending on the author, depending on dates, depending on several factors, okay? You can either apply automatic labels, or you can manually apply additional labels, okay? And again, this could be done by your users as well, okay? These labels can be used to persist as container metadata or file metadata, okay? So again, they could be part of the filing itself, or could be used to only use it to classify the data, okay? Could be readable by other systems, okay? Because, well, these labels are created using a standard format, okay? Also, these labels can be used to determine data loss prevention policies based on labels, okay? For example, if this document, depending on the presence of certain labels, could be deleted or could be not deleted or even modified depending, again, on the situation, okay? This, of course, could be extensible to partner solutions, just like in the previous point, because, well, this can be readable by other systems. And again, depending on the situation, could be used to further classify and protect your data, or even they could be read by other systems or other solutions, okay? Also, for example, if you applied a label in order to protect this data, because you can apply, for example, a legal hold on those documents, you can also specify for how long this legal hold is going to be applied, okay? And thus protecting and even relating all the documents to that specific case or that specific situation, okay? You can label data at rest, data in use, or even data in transit. Okay, so at any given point, you can apply different labels, or you can also read and even modify those labels depending on the current state of this data, of these documents. Okay, you can enable protection actions based on those labels, based on the presence or the type of these labels. Okay, and well, this is completely transparent. This is completely seamless to end users, and well, this is going to be conserved across productivity applications. Okay, so regardless of the situation, regardless of the document, regardless of the application used to read these documents or files, the labels, the security labels, should be and will be maintained. Okay. So what else? Several capabilities can be applied. It can be used by the appliance of sensitivity labels. Okay. Some of the capabilities could include, for example, encryption, automatic encryption, or even decryption of the data. For example, also in order to mark content, in order to, again, apply data loss prevention policies, in order to protect content in several containers or repositories, including, for example, storage accounts in Azure, for example, or SharePoint sites, or even, for example, content hosted on OneDrive for users, or OneDrive for business, or even third-party applications such as Dropbox, okay? And remember, in most cases, you can apply these labels automatically, depending, again, on the situation, or the stage, or even the status of these applications, okay? What else? Well, in order to apply the policies, you need to consider your full environment, okay? In this case, for example, you can consider the application or the services used to create, to read, or even share these documents as well. Okay. For example, for on-premises environments, you can classify any label data in on-premises repositories, SAN devices, removable or external storage devices, such as external hard disk drives, flash drives, and so on and so forth. Okay. And also for certain versions of Office applications across all platforms, again, depending on the version of Office or the application from the Office suite that is being used, you can label and protect Office files natively across Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and even web clients if you want to. Okay, so well. Also, for specific applications such as SharePoint, Teams, Exchange Online, you can apply different labels in order to further protect the data. Okay, for example, if a document has been sent again as an attachment through email, if, for example, maybe someone who is not supposed to receive this file, if a protection label is applied, even if that person receives the email and can see the attachment, maybe depending on the policy, even if that document is still on the inbox for this user, they will not be able to open the file or even edit or even maybe resend or forward this email or its corresponding contents, because of course the label is blocking them to perform those actions. Okay, so again, even if someone by mistake or on purpose send that file or files as an attachment, if the receiver doesn't have the proper permissions, they will not be able to see that information. Okay. And again, the same can be applied for SharePoint or even for non-Microsoft clouds and different applications. Okay, like Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, and so on and so forth. Okay, so again, even if the action can be performed, like for example, attaching a document to an email, if the destination, if for example, the receiver for this email, for this message, if they don't have the proper permissions, they will not be allowed to open or even see that document. Okay, you can apply also other restrictions, such as, like for example, maybe blocking this document to be printed, or maybe blocking this file to be forwarded, or even received by other users. Okay, so again, you can apply several policies in order to restrict the access to your files or documents. Okay, so now how can you create and configure sensitivity labels and its corresponding policies? Okay, first, of course, for example, an admin or at least an account with admin rights will create a sensitivity label, okay, and then will publish this label to users and groups selected in a label policy. Okay, then the users that are in those groups, for example, can, for example, work on an email or document and will be able to see the available labels and then apply them manually, complementing the labels created and applied automatically by administrator. Okay, and well, they can classify the document by applying a label. Okay, and then using Office or some other third-party applications or services, it can enforce protection settings on the email or document based on the applied label. Okay, as I was saying with the previous example. Okay, so now label analytics. Well, with label analytics, you can view the total number of retention labels and sensitivity labels applied to certain types of content. Also, you can see the top labels and the count on how many times each label has been applied. Okay. Also, you can see the locations where labels are applied and the count for each location. And also you can count for how many files and folders had the retention label changed or removed. Okay, and even who changed that label, if the case is needed. Okay, for example, if this was performed by an administrator or maybe by a user, and what was the purpose for the modification of that label. Okay, and well, Azure Information Protection, how can you extend the services provided by sensitivity labels using the service? So So if you're using Azure Information Protection labels because your tenant isn't yet on the unified labeling platform, Microsoft recommends that you avoid creating sensitivity labels until you activate unified labeling. Okay, so in this case, label manager for Azure information policies labels in the Azure portal is worth mentioning that it's going to be deprecated. Was deprecated last year. Okay, well, in that case, again, if you want to, it's very recommended that you use sensitivity labels instead of using Azure information protection. Okay, that is the general idea. So, well, now another thing that you can do with labels is, for example, archiving. Okay, so how archiving works in Microsoft 365? Well, first of all, I'll switch it back to records. Okay, so first, in-place archiving and records management. Okay, remember, data governance in Microsoft 365 will enable you to archive content as appropriate in Exchange mailboxes, SharePoint sites, and OneDrive for business locations in your Microsoft 365 organization. Okay, so well, in-place archiving in Exchange. Well, first of all, archiving in Exchange is performed by a feature called in-place archiving. With in-place archiving, users can view an archived mailbox and move or copy messages between their primary mailbox and their archived mailbox, if any, of course. Okay, archived mailboxes allow you to offload the data footprint on the Exchange servers. With archived mailboxes, your organization can control messaging data by eliminating the need for personal stored files. Okay, and again, also in order to securely store those messages in a more controlled environment, okay, in order to further protect that information. On the other side, in-place records management in SharePoint, in-place records management will enable you to effectively manage records in a collaborative workspace, and also will allow SharePoint documents to be declared as records automatically, again, if you want to do so, okay? In more details, in SharePoint, so first, when an administrator enables the user's mailbox for in-place archiving, an additional mailbox is going to be created and displayed in the user's Outlook and Outlook on the web as well. Mails, in this case from the primary mailbox, can then be moved to archiving after a certain period of time. Okay, the archived mailbox is not cached on the client computer; it's going to be stored on the service or the server side. Okay. In order to protect from accidental or malicious deletion and to facilitate discovery efforts, Exchange 26 and later versions, and even Exchange Online, can use the recoverable items folder. That is an extension for this service. Okay, and then the recoverable items folder will replace the feature that was known as the dumpster in earlier versions, well, in previous versions of Exchange. Okay. Now in SharePoint, well. In this case, well, remember, a record is a document or other electronic or physical entity in an organization that serves as evidence of an activity or transaction. Records management is the process by which an organization can determine what kinds of information should be considered records, how active documents that will become records should be handled, how active documents should be collected, in what manner and for how long each record type should be retained, and then researched and implemented technology by technological solutions. Okay, and also how can be performed records related tasks. Okay, including the modification, the deletion, and even the movement for these records. Okay, so well, in SharePoint, archiving is referred to as in-place records management as well. Okay. And speaking of retention, well, how can you implement retention in Microsoft 365? Well, real quick here, retention policies. Well, a retention policy, remember, in Microsoft 365 can help you achieve several goals. Okay, you can, for example, comply proactively with industry regulations and even internal policies as well. Again, depending on the industry, depending on the standards that you want to follow, depending on compliance reasons, and so on and so forth. Also, you can reduce the risk in the event of litigation or a security breach. Okay, this can also help your organization to share knowledge effectively and be more agile in case that you want to achieve those. In order to implement several workflows that could be used to protect the flow of information. Okay, when was a document created? Who created it? Who wants to modify it? By which reason this document was modified? Who authorized the modification? If you want to apply legal holds, if you want to apply retention policies, and so on and so forth. Okay. So in this case, for example, remember some important points. Retention policies wins over deletion. Okay, so in this case, if you apply a document, a retention, well, if you apply to a retention label, sorry, give me 1 second. Uh, oh, sorry, there it goes. Well, again, sorry about this. If you apply a retention policy over a document, even if you delete, if you want to, if you attempt to delete that content, if it has been applied a retention policy, the retention is going to win over deletion. So that means that you will not be able to delete that document. Okay. The longest retention policy, the longer retention period will win. Okay. So if you apply a retention policy for 30 days, and later you apply another retention policy for 5 days, remember, well, in this case, the longest retention policy will win, okay? So you will not be able to delete this document before the 30-day period has expired, okay, or has passed, okay? Also, explicit inclusion will win over implicit inclusion, okay? So in this case, if you apply a policy that will be used to override a certain setting, that policy is going to win over the default setting as well, okay? And also the strongest deletion period will win, okay? In that case, again, you can apply, for example, sub-deletion policies in order to, well, maybe mark a document or a file as deleted, but that could, those documents or those files could be, for example, placed in a sort of a recycle bin in order to maybe not be able to delete them completely until after a certain period has expired, okay, or has passed as well, okay? That is the general idea. So now, specifically speaking about Exchange, how can you implement messaging records management in Exchange? MRM, or well, messaging records management in Exchange will help you to manage users' mailboxes and archive mailboxes. It can be used to move messages from the primary mailbox to archive, delete, to the archiving mailbox, for example. You can also delete mails after a specific time or even preserve Exchange elements if you want to do so. In Exchange, retention is performed using the retention policies, okay? And well, again, the definition of a retention policy will allow you to remove all messages after a specific period, for example, or maybe move them to a different location, remove messages based on folder location, allow users to tag messages, or even retain messages for a specific period of time, okay? Or well, or many other actions as well. All of this, again, depending on the content of and the limits that you apply to your mailboxes in Exchange. This, of course, can also be applied to Exchange Online as well. Now, administrators will use retention tags to apply retention settings to items and folders in a given user's mailbox. The applied settings will specify how long a message stays in the user's mailbox and what happens when the message reaches its retention age, for example. Retention tags could also contain settings on how to process messages, while retention policies are required to group retention tags and assign them to a mailbox in case, of course, that you want to do so. And you can use this image, this flowchart, for example, as an example, okay? So, well, again, retention tags are used to apply retention settings to messages and folders, okay? And mainly speaking, there are 3 types of retention tags. The default policy tags that you can see and you can apply if you want to, but you cannot modify them. You cannot delete them either, okay? In this case, a DPT or default policy tag applies to all items that do not have a retention tag applied, either inherit or explicit, okay? On the other side, we have also retention policy tags. Retention policy tags, or RPTs, are created for default folders, such as the inbox folder, the deleted items, and so on and so forth, okay? And then we have the personal tags. Personal tags are used by Outlook and Outlook web applications users to apply retention settings to custom folders and individual items, such as individual email messages, okay? And here you can apply the same set of permissions, or policies to different items. For example, to move to archive, to permanently delete an item, to move them to voice email, or for example, to delete all their voice messages, in order, for example, to move it to archiving folders for example, 1 year. to mark items as business critical information, to delete certain messages after 1 week, or for example, delete an only type or different set of messages, different type of messages after 6 months, for example, okay, and some other policies, all right. Now, one important thing, and remember, before you implement any functionality, you need to properly and carefully plan how you are going to implement it. So in this case, another stage, another step that you may want to take is, for example, how you can calculate an appropriate retention age. Okay, so in this case, the managed folder assistant will process mailboxes that have a retention policy applied, and then add the retention tax included in the policy to the mailbox, and then lately will process items in the mailbox based on policy settings. Okay, so in this case, the retention age of mailbox items is going to be calculated from the date of delivery or the date of creation for items such as drafts that are not delivered but created by the user. Okay, so when using retention policies in the compliance center, you can control the way in which the age of elements is going to be calculated. Okay, so here, for example, you can see an example of a retention age being calculated. Okay, so for example, of course, there are some other options that are not seen here. This image has been cropped, okay, for space reasons as well. The point is, for example, in this case, if you want to, you can apply this rule to just delete content that is older than, for example, 7 years or 7 days or 7 months, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then you can specify how do you want to delete this content. You can delete the content based on when it was created or or when it was last modified as well. Okay, and also depending on the setting, you could see different options that could be used to delete or even move or archive this content, these messages. Okay, so now more details about retention policies. How can you create retention policies in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center? Okay, well, first, retention policies explain. Okay, in order to apply retention policies, you should consider the following elements. For example, the content in OneDrive accounts and SharePoint sites, how a retention policy works with the document versions in any given site, and these document versions can be configured at the office level or at the service level, for example. Okay, so for example, maybe you want to maintain only the most recent version of a document. So how long do you want to determine a document or a version of a document to be considered aged or should be considered as obsolete? Okay, so for example, you can apply a policy to only retain the most, the 3 most recent version of a document, okay, or even to maintain the original and just maintain, again, maybe the most recent version of this document, okay? So again, the original one and the most recent version, okay? Or the 3 most recent versions, and so on and so forth, okay? So again, this could be applied to Word documents or a certain repository, and so on and so forth, okay? This could also be applied to content in mailboxes and public folders, content that has been shared in Teams, content in Skype locations, and limitations for creating retention policies as well. Okay, so in this case, who is going to be in charge of applying these policies? Okay, maybe this could be applied and created only by administrators, or if you want to allow your users to create these policies and apply them to the corresponding content as well. So how can you use, in this case, if you want, you can use retention labels alongside with policies. Okay, so for example, in this case, you can create several labels. You can create your whole set of labels. For example, labels 1 to 5, to put an example. Remember to give these labels a more descriptive name, okay, in order to properly identify them and what is which label used for, okay. But again, in this case, you can have your set of labels, and then you can, for example, configure a label policy A or label policy 1, so to say, okay. And then you can apply this policy to locations to publish the labels, okay. For example, in this case, label policy A could be composed only by label 1 and 3, while label policy B could be composed by labels 3, 4, and 5, for example, okay. And again, depending on the situation, you can apply this set of labels only to Exchange or only to SharePoint and OneDrive, okay? And also to other, well, you could also apply them to groups of users or groups, or even for applications and locations and so on and so forth, okay? Again, depending on the situation. In short, which labels are going to be applied over which context, okay? That is the general idea, okay? Well, how can you create a retention policy? Well, several tasks are going to be needed to create a retention policy, okay? First, you need to assign permissions to create a policy, okay? In short, who is going to be able to create these policies? Remember, by default, only administrators can create these policies, but you can allow your users to create their own policies and apply them accordingly, okay? Then you will have to create a retention policy in the compliance center, and from there you can use advanced retention settings, again, if you want to do so, okay? This could be done, of course, through the admin portal, but also if you want to, you can create a script in order to automatically or after, or automatically, well, semi-automatically, you can run a script in order to create, modify, or even delete your retention policies, okay? And also to modify the scope of these policies is going to be effective over, okay? Next, how can you manage retention? Well, management tasks for retention policies could include, but again, are not limited to, well, for example, to add location exceptions to a policy, inactive mailboxes in Microsoft 365, or locking, for example, a retention policy, okay? Also, if you want to apply or remove a legal hold, and so on and so forth, okay? And again, from the context, here, for example, you can create a retention policy. You need to give it a name. Remember, again, try to give it a meaningful name every time that you are creating this policy, and then over which context you are going to apply this retention policy. For example, like in this example, it is going to be applied only to inactive mailboxes, right? Now, in some other cases, you can configure, for example, event-driven retention policies. So, well, it's worth mentioning that in order to successfully use event-driven retention policies, it is important to understand the relationship between event types, labels, events, and asset IDs, okay? So, for example, you can define an event type, okay? For example, product lifetime, okay? In this case, label 1 could be, for example, applied to product development files, okay? While label 2 could be applied to product certifications, okay? Maybe from the files for product development, not all the products have been approved, okay? And again, for example, the description for each product is going to be defined in separate documents, okay? But then once some documents regarding some products have been labeled as certificated, in that case, you can apply a second label, okay? Only, again, for products that have been certified, okay? So in short, not all documents that were originally created are going to be assigned this second label at the same time, okay? And maybe in some cases, some documents will never get this label, okay? Again, depending on the situation. And then, for example, the third label could be for product business decision records, okay? Again, in this case, who, for example, approved the certification for this product, okay? And then who added the label related to that product for all of these documents, okay? And again, this could be applied to emails, could be applied to Word documents, to PowerPoint slides, to spreadsheets, and so on and so forth, okay? And then, depending on the situation, you can also apply additional labels to properly encrypt or delete or even move those files to different locations, okay? And apply different policies, different settings in order to further protect or even compress or remove this data, okay? And well, speaking of which, archiving and retention in Exchange. Well, first, retention tags. Once again, retention tags are used to apply retention settings to messages and folders, okay, for all your users. Multiple retention tags can be grouped together into a retention policy, and retention policies can be applied at the mailbox level, okay, at the user account level, so to say, okay? So, well, for example, you can specify retention tag types, okay? The default policy tags that we described a minute ago, the retention policy tags or personal tags, okay? Remember, all of these were described in previous slides. The general idea, for example, is, well, for example, The PTS are the default retention tax for the entire mailbox. Okay, this is going to be applied at the organization level. The retention policy tax or PTS, these are for default folders. Okay, the only valid action is to delete or delete permanently. Okay, so move them to a temporary deletion like a recycle bin or delete items permanently. Okay, and then personal tax. These tags become available in Outlook and Outlook on the web, and users can use them to apply them to a mailbox folder or to an individual item if they want to do so. Okay, and well, now the retention action. Remember, you can apply different actions to following these tags. Okay. So, for example, delete and allow recovery. Okay, this action allows the user to recover deleted items until the deleted item retention period is reached for the mailbox database or the user. Okay, and remember the rules. Certain policies will take preference or will take precedence over others. Okay, for example, the longer retention period policy will win. The stronger policy is also going to win over other settings and so on. Okay. And well, for example, the retention action could be, for example, to permanently delete an item. This action, of course, will purge the item from the mailbox database. And well, as a side note, if the content of a mailbox is target for any retention policy in the security center or a hold, the content will not be deleted permanently. Therefore, it can still be returned by an e-discovery search, for example. Okay. We're going to discuss e-discovery in later points of this course. But well, again, the idea is, for example, if a legal hold has been applied or a retention policy has been applied, even if a user marks an item to be deleted, they will not be able to see it, but the item will still be able to be recovered. Okay. And also, if you want, you can mark or use a retention tag in order to move an item to the archiving folder, for example. Okay, this action, as the name implies, will move the item to the user's active archive mailbox if one exists. Okay, so if a user does not have an archive mailbox, no action is going to be taken. Okay, this action is available only for default retention tags that are automatically applied to an entire mailbox, such as as well as tags applied by users to items or folders. Okay, in this case, these are for personal tags. And then, how can you create a retention policy? Well, now in more details, configuring a retention policy is simply a matter of creating a new policy and then adding the retention tags that you want to that policy. Okay, so for example, once again, you need to, when you want to create a new retention policy, you need to give it a meaningful name. Okay, like for example, my custom retention policy. Again, try to use more meaningful names. This is just for demonstration purposes. Okay, and well, here, for example, once you have a name, you need to define the type. You need to also specify the retention period and the retention action. Okay, remember the retention period could be any period that you define in hours, in minutes, in days, in months, in years, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then the action to maybe allow deletion, to move it to archive, and some other actions as well. Okay, or maybe delete it permanently, and so on and so forth. Okay. Once you have created your policies, you need to assign it to your mailboxes. Okay, to all your users. Okay. So, well, in order to apply retention policy, you will have to assign it to a user mailbox. In order to do so, you can use the Exchange Admin Center or even PowerShell scripts to assign retention policies as well. Okay. Hold on a second here. All right. So, well, now, in this case, following this example here, for example, when you browse to the section, the mailbox features, you can select the mailbox settings, phone and voice features, and email connectivity options for this mailbox. Okay, and well, once you have created your policy, in this case, you can apply them, you can select them using this drop-down control. Okay, for example, you can apply the default sharing policy. You can also apply the default role assignment policy, or even the retention policy if you want to do so. Okay, in this case, you can select for the defaults, or you can assign any specific policy that you have created previously. Okay, and also it's worth mentioning that in some cases, if you do not see any policy at the moment in this list, you may need to wait a few minutes after you have created a policy before you can apply it. Okay, this could happen from time to time. Okay, so now in order to troubleshoot retention policies, well, of course there are several tasks that you can perform in order to evaluate the application of your policies. But well, generally speaking, you should perform the following steps in order to troubleshoot retention policies that do not run. Okay, for example, you can assess MRM requirements for different set of users. Okay, again, the idea is to first create these policies and then test them before you deploy them. Okay, and then gradually moving to the appliance for these policies to your whole company. Okay. Then, for example, you can determine which Outlook client versions are in use. Older versions of Outlook, such as Outlook 2007, do not allow users to set retention tags, for example. Only for versions of Office 2010 and later. Okay? Again, you need to test retention policies by applying a retention policy to a single mailbox in order to determine whether the retention policy is working as desired or not. Okay. And once you have determined the proper functionality for this policy, you can apply it to the rest of your environment. Okay. Also, create and test new retention policies as well as retention tags. And well, remember to maybe even document everything that you are implementing. Okay. You need to create your procedures, right, in order to keep track of every change that is being made. Okay. Also, you need to confirm that retention tags have been added to retention policies, and well, during testing, confirm whether mailboxes have been placed on hold or not. Okay. Now, also in place archiving of mailboxes in Microsoft 365. Well, in order to complete all of these steps, you can go to the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. Okay, you need to sign in, of course, to Microsoft 365 using authorized credentials. Okay, and also using an account that has proper permissions in order to create these rules, these policies. Okay, in the left pane, in the left section, you can click on Solutions and then go to Information Governance. Okay, in this section, you need to select Archive. Okay, and then in the list of mailboxes, you need to select the user that you want to enable the archive mailbox for. And then next, in the details pane for the selected users, you need to click Enable, and then you need to lastly click on Yes in order to enable the archive mailbox as well. Okay. And then in place records management in SharePoint now, well, the procedure is more or less the same. Okay, but well, records management planning process should include several steps. Okay, here you can see a list of 10 steps, but they are more or less the same steps that you need to follow in order to create this records management in other solutions as well. Okay, first, again, you need to identify records management roles and apply them to users, or well, to the accounts that will be used to manage these records in SharePoint, or even to that comes from other platforms, again, such as Exchange. Okay. Then you need to analyze organizational content. Again, you need to analyze your digital state, and then develop a file plan. Like, well, these steps were previously described in previous slides of this model. Okay. Again, you need to analyze your current state of things. You need to develop and test your retention tags and policies, and then test them again. Okay. And then once they have been verified, you can apply them to your whole environment. Okay. In order to properly manage the content now stored not only in Exchange, but also in SharePoint, like in this case. Okay. Then you need to develop retention schedules. Again, it will be done for different types of documents for different periods of times, and so on and so forth. You need to evaluate and improve document management practices for administrators and users as well. You need to design the records management solution. You need to plan how content is going to become a record and when content is going to become a record. You need to plan for email integration, again, using the policies that come from Exchange, for example. How can you extend those policies now using SharePoint policies, okay? And then you need to plan compliance for social content, okay? Again, the content that could be generally shared or only the content that could be accessed only by a certain users, okay? And of course, you need to plan compliance reporting and documentation, okay? Again, you need to document all your steps, all your procedures in order to properly maybe manage all of these procedures and settings and so on, okay? Now, in more details, how can you create a file plan in order to manage records? Well, a file plan, again, which is your planning document for records management, typically will summarize the following information. First, a description of the types of items the organization acknowledged to be records. Then the definitions for the broader category of records the item belongs to. Also the locations where records are stored, the retention periods for records, and the person or persons responsible for managing the various kinds of records. Okay. Then, how to properly plan to convert archived documents to records. After developing a file plan, you need to plan how active documents in your organization will become records, and if they will become records, or they can be deleted permanently without them becoming a record, for example. Okay, you can choose either from either creating records manually or automatically. Okay, and also when in-place records management is enabled for a site, you can create a policy that declares a document to be a record automatically as well. Of course, configuring enable records management will offer several benefits. Okay, some of these benefits could include, for example, records can exist and be managed across multiple sites, so you can define these rules and policies only one time and apply them in different sites without having to create them and assign them manually or individually. Okay, and also with versioning enabled, maintaining versions of records is going to be automatic. Okay, and also e-discovery search can be executed against both records and active documents at the same time. Okay, and remember more about e-discovery in later modules. A broader control over what a record is in your organization and who can create a record can also be configured using policies. Okay. And lastly, how you can configure in-place records management. Okay. Again, you must perform several tasks in order to configure in-place records management. Okay. The first step, of course, is to activate in-place records management at the site collection level. Okay. The next step could include configure record declaration settings at the site collection level as well. Okay. And lastly, configure record declaration settings at the list of library level can also be implemented. Okay. And remember, in the first level, this is going to be applied at the company level, organization level. Okay, this is for the whole company. And optionally, you can perform the second and the third steps as well. Okay, in case that you want to be more specific about the way in which these documents or these records, these files are going to be created and managed. Okay, and well, let's see. That is it for this module, for this part of the module, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are not going to cover any more topics. Remember, we are about to go into a 30-minute break. And then you are going to continue with the corresponding lab activities for today, for today's lessons. And well, in this case, well, remember, all your questions, all your comments can be directed at our moderators team through the questions and answers section. Right? So again, in this case, we're going to go now for a longer break, and then we're going to continue after 30 minutes more or less. Okay. Well, okay, we still have a few minutes in order to answer your questions. So let's take a look at them. Give me just 1 second here. Okay, let's just go ahead and try to answer some questions before we go for our break. And let's see, if you have spam and delete this, will the deletion policy be approved or overruled. In this case, what do we need to do? Okay, well, in this case, regarding spam, you don't have to perform anything at all, okay? Because, well, automatic spam rules are going to be created, are going to be applied, okay? So if a message is marked as spam, the rules, the corresponding rules, for example, for retention policies and protection of deletion are not going to be applied, okay? So in this case, any of the elements that we have discussed do not apply to spam, to any messages that have been marked as spam. In order to properly manage spam, you can implement, for example, rules or filters directly in Exchange or even in Exchange Online. You can configure Exchange Online protection, okay, that was discussed previously, well, that was discussed in fact yesterday, okay? So in short, for spam, any of these settings that we have discussed today do not apply, all right? Let me just delete this, okay. How does this work with spam? Again, well, this is just like the previous question. Remember, well, if a message has been marked as spam, any of these settings, any of these rules are going to be applied. Okay, so you don't have to worry about the spam. That is managed in a different manner. Okay. You can see the video, but you can see the chat. You can't see the chat. Okay, well, there is not a chat section. It's just a question and answer section here. Okay. Okay, well, this question has been repeated over and over and over again. Yes, you will get an exam voucher only if you complete all the requirements. In this case, you need to attend all the sessions during the week, and then you will have to be assigned a voucher, okay? We have more than 3,000 of vouchers available, so I'm pretty sure every one of you will be able to get a voucher, okay? Again, well, which labs are for today? Try to complete as many lab activities as possible, okay? And remember, you can complete them as homework if you are not able to complete them after we return from the break, okay? It's not a matter of completing the most labs in a hurry. Try to complete as many as you can, and the remaining labs activities can be completed afterwards. Don't worry about it. No problem. You are most welcome. Okay, let's see. The vouchers, once they have been assigned, have an expiration date of 3 months, if I am not mistaken. Okay, but well, that is for activations. That is for when you want to redeem them. All right. So in that case, if you want, you can maybe redeem them at the end of this year, and then at the moment you can select the appropriate date for you to take the exam, the most adequate one for you for your exam. Okay. Over the terms and vouchers per course, divided across all the courses available per course. Okay. In this case, during this week, if I am not mistaken, there are 5 simultaneous courses, simultaneous sessions, and this is going to be divided by, well, each set of sessions has been assigned a different set of vouchers. So again, I'm pretty sure most of you will be able to get a voucher for the exam. Okay. Yeah, well, the vouchers have an expiration date of 3 months. Okay, after this week. Okay, so in short, you have 3 months to redeem that voucher before it expires. And remember, you can select any date that you want to for you to take the exam. All right. Very well. So now we are going to go for a small break, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, after this next break, you're going to perform the labs, and any other comment or question can be directed again to our moderators team using this section, the question and answer section. Okay. So I'm going to, on behalf of today's team, Thank you for your attention, and we're going to meet in the next part for today's session. Okay? Thank you so much. See you around in a couple minutes. Bye-bye for now.